as a presenter or journalist, and it's something I'm having to try to navigate, you end up friendly with people, and then you have to do your job and perhaps potentially call them out in public.
Well, I found that really difficult when I first started doing this, because I became a radio presenter when I was 48. I'd kind of given up on getting into radio at that point. And for the first couple of years, I did find it quite awkward interviewing politicians who were my friends. Now, some people, Adam Bolton, for example, says he has no friends who are politicians because he thinks it might influence him. I've never really bought that. And now it doesn't bother me at all. And they know that I've got a job to do. I know they've got a job to do. It's not a game. And sometimes I think I probably go too far the other way. David Davis and Brandon Lewis, who are probably my two closest friends in Conservative politics, they think I give them a harder time than any other interviewer that they get interviewed by, because they think I overcompensate. I don't think I do, but I can't put my hand on my heart and say it's definitely not the case. But you do have a professional job to do. And I had a Labour MP on the other day, Mike Tapp, the MP for Dover, and he'd been on my programme a few times before. We'd always got on quite well. And he was coming on to defend Keir Starmer's speech. And I gave him an absolute roasting. And that's not generally my approach. I said, so you've issued this Trumpian tweet about chaos and bringing immigration down. I said, let's just see who you don't want in this country. Ukrainians? You'd like to send them home? Would you? No. Hong Kongers, would you like to send them back?
I saw that.
And I went through this list, and by the end of it, he was kind of on the ropes. And normally, I don't do that kind of sort of forensic interview, because if you attack a politician right from the start, they're human beings. Their shutters go up. And the listener loses out if you take that approach.
And it's mean.
Well, yes, it is mean. And I can have longer form interviews than most people because I don't do a drive time or breakfast show. On those shows, you're interviewing someone for 4 or 5 minutes. They know what they want to say, and they're going to say it whatever you ask them. And it's kind of boring, I find. And I mean, I did the drive time show for 5 years, but frankly, even though I was quite surprised when they took me off it because they got Eddie Mayer in, when I thought about it, I thought, you know what, you've been doing this for 5 years. Maybe it's time anyway. But long form interviews, you can have a conversation and you can get things out of people just by using pauses and silence. Because if you're not talking, they know they've got to talk. And therefore they might say something interesting, unguarded, controversial. And often when I do these longer form interviews on the radio, you get to say it's a 30-minute interview, it's a minute 27, you get the newsline. And you've got the producer saying, oh no, you've got nothing out of this yet. And you kind of have to have the confidence to say, don't worry, it'll come.
Are they shouting in your ear then? That's got to put you off a bit.
My producers know that I don't like that.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of producers over the years who will always come up with far better questions than I can. So I don't object to that. I like them on the screen possibly rather than in my ear. Though I did have one producer who would insist on talking in my ear while I was talking. And I kept saying, you can't do that because my brain can't compute this. Other people's might do. And other people take a very different approach to this. Like Andrew Marr, when he was doing his Sunday show, I remember we were both on the media show on Radio 4, because it was so media. And it was him, me and Rachel Sylvester, and it was all about the art of the interview. And I was quite pleased to be invited to be, if I'm honest. And so the first question from Amal Rajan was, well, how do you prepare for a big interview?
Well, he's great. Is he the guy from the University Challenge?
Yes.
Oh, he's really good.
And I thought, shall I tell the truth? So I did. And I said, I don't prepare for interviews. And I could see Andrew Marr literally open-mouthed. My preparation for a big interview, by which I mean a prime minister or party leader, is to have 5 bullet points on a piece of paper with the subjects that I want to cover. I don't have any questions written down. Andrew explained that he war games his interview, so he'll have the producer pretend to be the guest. So he'll ask the guest a question. Depending on what the producer says, he says, right, well, I'll follow that up. If he says that,
God, the micromanagement.
Well, it's not even that. It's that if I did that, my brain would go to mush.
So would mine, yeah.
And I know that I can't do that. And in the end, you have to play to what you know you're good at. And I know that I'm good at a conversational interview, and I know I can get things out of people. But the moment I try to be Andrew Marr or Andrew Neil or Jeremy Paxman, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You have to play to your strengths.
I'm the same as you. It would be more of a Louis Theroux than an Andrew Marr.
And we have both got quite soft voices.
Yeah.
So we're unthreatening as interviewers. So therefore, people will confide in us.
That's interesting.
I remember the first show I did on LBC back in 2009. I had to do an hour on the fact that Channel 4 had been given permission to show adverts for abortion clinics, way outside my comfort zone. But instead of getting callers on the advertising part, I got women phoning in telling me about their abortions. And I said to my boss afterwards, I said, well, did I handle that okay? And he said, well, your great advantage is that you're unthreatening. You don't interrupt. You've got a soft voice, and you've got a likable voice. Whereas if it was a more aggressive interviewer, I wouldn't have got those callers. And I've always remembered that. And in those sort of emotional phone-ins, which I much prefer to political ones, I deploy that. It's not a tactic, because that is me, but I know that I can get people to phone in to tell me things that they've never told their husband or wife or friends. I remember Anne in Enfield rang in. This is about 2013. We're doing a program on rape, and she said that she had been raped at a family wedding by a family member in the Loos. And she said, I've never told anyone this before. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you do realise you're on the radio. And she said, oh, and it wasn't a normal rape. And of course, like a fool, I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, it wasn't up the vagina. And I went, oh, Christ, and this was before 9 o'clock. Wow. So I then had to apologise to listeners. Anyway, she was on for quite a long time. She then rang in the next night and said, I want to speak to Iain again, please. And my producer said, well, we're talking about HS2. Anyway, we left her on at the end of the hour, and she said, Iain, I've told my husband. I'm thinking, fuck, what have I done?
Well, you've helped, maybe.
And she said, I feel as if I can see the sky again. And it's at moments like that where you know that you've done something good. And when you're talking about whether it's mental health, depression, grief, whatever, I know that there are at least 5 people alive today who wouldn't be alive had I not done mental health hours during COVID, because they've told me. I had a guy come up to me at a live podcast event, and I said, I was in Cardiff. I said, are you from here? He said, no, I've driven up from, I better not say where. And I thought, 200 miles to come to this? And he said, I just wanted to thank you for your programs during COVID, because I had pills laid out on a table and I was going to take them. And then I heard you and Jackie laughing in your podcast, and I thought, I can't. And this was 2 years after COVID. And he said, and again, I can't say the job, but I said, well, how have you recovered from that? He said, well, I'm now director of mental health for a local authority. And I thought, wow. And it's that sort of thing gives me far more job satisfaction than doing a debate on Brexit with somebody.
Of course. That's beautiful. It's a really beautiful story. I don't know how to segue from that. I need sort of adverts or the LBC noise, do or something.
Yeah, awkward gear change coming up right now, ladies and gentlemen.
What do you think about Gary Lineker then? Anyway, BBC, what's he saying and all of that? Bloody hell. No, that is beautiful. And I feel this, I wrote a book, The Psychology of Secrets, which I don't want to plug because we're going to plug your book today.
You just did.
It's no, I'll blank that. It will go, it won't, nobody know. So I'm going to give you a copy after, because I think you'll be interested, because it is all about exact. I looked into the sort of the studies of what makes people reveal.
It's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
I remember one day I said to my producer, right, let's talk about male rape on the programme tonight, like male on male. He goes, was that a thing?
Oh, wow.
I said, oh, yes. I said, it nearly happened to me once. He said, really? He said, oh, I don't think I want to know the details of that, being a 24-year-old wokey. And I said, no, it'll work, believe me. Within, I think, 5 minutes, we had a full switchboard of calls. I talked about my own experience, effectively to give permission for people to tell their experiences. And it was an amazing hour. It really was, because no other presenter would ever cover anything like that. And I've been doing it now for 15 years. And I love the feeling of finding something new to talk about. So you're not just doing the staple diet of immigration, benefit reform, Israel, whatever.
Yeah. This is one of the issues with YouTube. It's sort of the way you get into this pattern where YouTube, you have a certain number of subscribers. This one is 400.
You have quite a lot.
400,000.
Yeah, I know.
And that's just YouTube. What about Spotify?
Well,
and all
indeed.
So it's a lovely feeling. But look, they all came because they came and watched a certain topic that I was talking about when a lot of the legacy media were not. I mean, you were, but a lot of people were not. And that's what those subscribers are interested in. So if I now go, gosh, Tottenham are in the Europa League final, it's just something that I'm interested in, I'm excited about, and I'm going to do a video on that. It's not like, imagine every video gets 100,000 views normally, and this one will only get 90,000. No, this one will get 1,000. So it's not just the revenue, it's also, what a sad thing. I put so much time and effort into that and nobody watched it and then your next videos won't do as well either, because YouTube goes, oh, his last video, they're not. So you're in a constant spiral. It's a shame on YouTube, and you have to actually start new channels. So this is my football channel, or this is my so-and-so channel.
But it is important that you do, it's a horrible phrase, but give of yourself, enable people to know you. And you're not this anonymous figure. I mean, do you remember, well, you won't remember because you weren't alive, but in the 1960s, there was this, what was it called? Anyway, it was a political interview program. The interviewer was called John Freeman, but you never saw his face. He was always sitting with the back to the camera, and the camera was always on the interview. It was a black quite a dark studio. And it was a brilliant, brilliant program. But I think successful interviewers are ones, or particularly on speech radio, more than television, are the ones where people know, if somebody comes up to me in the street and recognises me, invariably they will say, oh, how are the dogs? Oh, West Ham having a shit season, aren't they? So watched the Eurovision last night, did you? They know stuff about me. My partner hates it. So, can you keep nothing private is the usual phrase.
That's my wife as well. Although I shouldn't say that. Even saying that, I feel like I've given too much of her.
No, because it's my job. If I didn't do this, people wouldn't relate to me. They wouldn't see me as the friend that they've never met. And that is that personal connection that a radio interviewer has with the audience, where they're listening to you, hopefully every night of the week, and they feel they know you, even though they don't.
Was it Mike Tapp, was it?
Yeah.
Mike Tapp. When you said about the Ukraine stuff, would you give those? My feeling is that most people don't want Ukrainians to go back and Polish people to go back, and it put him potentially in a situation where he was going to have to either give a very difficult truth that I think a lot of people are on board with, or say I don't know and sort of get flustered like he did. But it's a truth that I don't even want to say in words right now. But I think it's an issue with people coming to this country who have an ideology, as I said about Scientologists, that is fundamentally runs counter to ours. And even now, people can't say it. Now, 13 years ago, Stacey Dooley did a documentary for the BBC, which went around Luton, and she literally spelled out in her dulcet Stacey Dooley tones, a very friendly face, dancing on ice Stacey Dooley, exactly what people thought then. I think that feeling is far stronger now, because there simply is more Islam in this country. That is I think, what he couldn't say. Do you think that's fair? Not that he's right or wrong, but that's what he couldn't say.
Well, I don't know whether he would have wanted to say that, but he got to the end of the interview without actually being able to identify anybody that he would want not to be here that was here. But you can't, if you're making a great play out of wanting to reduce immigration, you've got to be able to say the kind of people that you don't want to come here. And he couldn't do that.
Yeah. I think he could have articulated it in a certain way, but
I don't think he could, because I right from the start, when I talked to Corey, my producer, about how we were going to do this interview, and as I normally say, we don't prepare for them, but this one we did. I said, I don't think he'll have an answer to any of these.
Well, he could have said, we don't want people coming to this country who come from cultures, for example, that have 97% of people who dislike Jews. You can't say that if
you're a Labour MP.
Well, that's a problem for him.
Well,
fair enough.